All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're diving into some team previews. Wrapping up the ACC today, we've got the Clemson Tigers. If you are enjoying our content, please make sure to subscribe. We appreciate all the support we get. But we're going to start out on the offensive side of the ball, talk a little bit about the strengths of the Clemson Tigers going into this season. We'll start off with Marcus.
Yeah, I think the main strength of this team is going to be like their front court versatility. Like Nick Davidson, I know Cody's a big fan. Nick Davidson coming over from Nevada averaged right around 16 points a game last year on 50% from the field, and he took 124 threes as a 6'9", like stretch four type player. He's going to be a real strength for this team. As a guy, took 124 threes, made 37% of them. Also gets to the line at a high clip, 50% free throw rate, shoots 70% at the line. Solid on the offensive glass, generates offense for others, almost an 18% assist rate, with a 25% usage rate. So I think he really is going to have the ability to do a lot of different things for this team. In particular, because the guard play is much different now. You don't have Chase Hunter, you don't have Jaden Zachary to kind of key the offense. You don't have Ian Shefflin to bring the offense together. So now you have Nick Davidson, who, like I said, I know Cody is going to probably need like a 5-minute soliloquy to get all his thoughts out. But I think Nick Davidson is going to be a key piece, and then or like the main piece, and then Jake Walleen I think offers some like stretch ability. 35% from three last year on 77 attempts. So I think there's a little bit of versatility in the front court unit, in particular with Davidson. So I think that's where the strength will be in this offense, because the guard play is a little bit uncertain, I would say. Not a ton of like proven high experience guys in the backcourt.
Cody, we'll over to you. It sounds like a clear strength is Nick Davidson.
It is, and yeah, just the front court in general, I think, is a strength, as it typically is with Brad Brownell teams. And I think he did a really good job of replacing Shefflin and Locken this quickly with a group of Nick Davidson, Carter Welling, getting RJ Godfrey back after his quick absence or his quick vacation at Georgia, or whatever you want to call it. It ended up being a boomerang transfer. And then Jake Walleen, like Marcus mentioned, he's going to be a little bit of a stretch option, probably comes off the bench. I would assume the front court lineup is Nick Davidson and Carter Welling. And I think they kind of match Brad Brownell's philosophy rather perfectly, honestly. And I think Davidson ends up becoming the engine of this offense. And like, he just has a super well-rounded game. You can put him in a ton of different scenarios. I think he can be a real mismatch for ACC defenses at the 4 position. He has the size to bully smaller fours in the front court, and he has the foot speed and perimeter skill to space out big men when he ultimately moves to the 5 position in stretches. So I'm rather, like, I've always been impressed with his game, and he's come along throughout his entire career at Nevada, and saw more usage last season. And well, he kind of flourished, although Nevada was, kind of a disappointment last season. But yeah, I do think we see Davidson operating a ton in like dribble handoffs and the pick and pop game and short roll, and just in pretty much every play type imaginable. I think he's not going to have a PJ Hall type usage from a couple of years ago, but I do think he's going to be borderline just as important as PJ Hall was 2 years ago.
All right, let's talk weaknesses now for the Clemson offense. Marcus, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I kind of talked about it a little bit already, and I think it's just like the lack of experience in the backcourt, or at this level anyway. They've got Dylan Hunter, who has never really played a huge role. Justin Porter coming over from Middle Tennessee. But he's not really a creator for others. You look at his numbers, 7.5% assist rate. Dylan Hunter, has been solid, 14.6% assist rate, but like his usage rate is very, very low. So now you're asking a couple of guys to play on the ball quite a bit and generate offense for others that haven't really done a lot of it or not done super well. And so I think that's a main concern for me, is just like the guard play, generating offense. Like I said, I think they're going to play through Nick Davidson a lot, but you still need guards that can handle pressure and take care of the basketball, which I think is a little bit of a concern for me. That's my main concern.
Cody, do you share the concerns or anything you want to add?
I do. Yeah. It's just the guard creation in general, and Marcus nailed it on the head with a guy like Dylan Hunter, who is the returner here. And we kind of know what we're getting from him, at least on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't really think he's a guy that's ready for like taking the reins and playing point guard for Clemson next year, for a team that's made multiple tournaments in its recent memory, or the last 2 years anyway. And it's just big shoes to fill. His brother, I think they're brothers, right? Is that Chase Hunter and Dylan Hunter were brothers, right?
Yeah.
I just think they're much different types of players, and I think it's just going to be a little bit too much for him to handle. So a guy like Justin Porter or Butta Johnson, and they're going to have to slide in as on ball creators a little bit more. And I don't really think they profile all that well. I think they're more secondary shot creators who are pretty talented movement shooters. They both have range, and I think they can both provide some value in the mid-range area off the bounce and pick and roll, but they don't really possess like high level, like 3-level scoring ability that I would like to see from this Clemson offense. And I mean, obviously they're going to be able to run a bunch of their offense through Davidson and through Carter Welling, who I think he's a guy that you can space the floor with in pick and pop. Didn't shoot at like a super high volume, but he shot at 30 for 85 last season. And he has an ability to attack slower footed bigs on and close out. And yeah, he has above the rim qualities as well with the ball in his hands. So I do think ultimately a lot of the pressure is going to be taken off of these guards with the front court, but it's not like these guys are all Americans in the front court. They're not going to be able to take on like this super high load and be extremely efficient. I do think this offense ultimately took a step back from the past couple of years.
All right, we're going to talk defensively now. And Marcus, what do you think defensively the Tigers do well?
I think it's another case of the front court kind of being what takes them home. I mean, I think they have good rim protection in Davidson at 5% block rate last year. Welling 7% block rate, and I believe he was the defensive player of the year, right, at Utah Valley. So I mean, you've got him coming over. Wallin 3.2% block rate. I think it just you've got a strong front court again, like Cody said, that Brownell typically has, that you can lean on as rim protection, as defensive rebounding, which his teams typically rebound the ball pretty well on the defensive end, and just kind of like versatility wise, I think Nick Davidson has the ability to guard a few different spots, or at least be serviceable guarding multiple spots. So I think the front court is certainly the strength. I think they should be good on the defensive glass with this group. So definitely the front court again, that should bring Clemson's success.
Anything to add, Cody?
Yeah, I took a different approach to this section. I actually tied my strengths and weaknesses kind of together. So I'm kind of just going to hammer both of these out at the same time. Like, I do think defensive rebounding and rim denial are their strengths, as it always is with Brad Brownell. They always do a really solid job on the D glass. They finished 218th last year, and they kind of optimized their turnover rate a little bit more. They defended pick and roll much differently than they have in the past couple of years. They played more of like a base drop coverage with PJ Hall at the 5 a couple of years ago, but with the Lock-in Schieffelin combo, they were kind of being a little more aggressive in in ball screens last year that ultimately led them to a 20% turnover rate on the defensive side, which was 43rd nationally. And then obviously when you have a guy like Jaden Zachary on the perimeter who's just a pest on the ball, Chase Hunter was really good as well. I do think this was the right thing to do for Brownell's defense, and they ultimately finished 18th in adjusted defensive efficiency. But I do think this group goes I think they go back to what they looked like with PJ Hall at the 5. I think they get a little bit more conservative. Like that 2024 team was 337th nationally in turnover rate, and they had a much better 2-point defense than they had a year ago. So I do think this is going to be a much higher floor defense that, filters teams into the mid-range and cuts off catch and shoot 3-point opportunities at the cost of taking a step back in the turnover forcing department. Filtering everything into Davidson and Welling. Like I think those two it's a really solid rim protection combo. So yeah, I think they become a bit more conservative. I still think this is a really high floor defensive group, but I'm not completely sure that they get to that 18th national defensive efficiency number.
Marcus, we'll go back to you and let you talk about some weaknesses you may want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think the weaknesses are really the backcourt and more specifically like the backcourt depth.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you even look at their roster, I think they only have 6 or 7 guys on roster that aren't freshmen. Everyone else is like they're loaded with freshmen. So they're either going to play a very, very short bench, which in the grand scheme of things, like they're going to, but over the course of a long season, you're going to run into injuries, you're going to run into illnesses, you're going to run into foul trouble where, you're going to have to play some of these guys, and whether or not they're ready to really contribute, to what like Brownell has set as the standard for like what Clemson basketball has become, which is a perennial tournament team and, like a 5 seed seemingly every year. Like, you got to be able to come in and do that, which I'm a little bit skeptical with the number of freshmen on roster and the inevitable of like what happens over the course of a college season with injuries and guys being out for whatever reason. So that's my main concern is just like the rotation inexperience.
Cody, let's hear your MVP and X Factor for the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah, my MVP and X Factor are the same player, and you guessed it, it's Nick Davidson. I just think, I've mentioned him enough times to where he's just going to have an impact on both sides of the ball, particularly on the offensive end as like the real engine in the post. So you can just the versatility of his offensive game is going to be extremely valuable. But I made him the X Factor because I think he kind of has to be an engine for this offense, and his game has to translate from the Mountain West to the ACC, which I think is like a fairly easy thing to do because I think they're relatively close in like in stature in conferences. So I think he's played against better defenses than the ACC has had to offer. Like San Diego State is perennially one of the best defenses in the country. So I think Nick Davidson he's ready for this task, and I think. But ultimately, I think he has to be, particularly from a playmaking sense, just because we don't really love the backcourt.
Marcus, similar thoughts, different thoughts? What do you think?
Similar MVP, Nick Davidson MVP. He's going to do.
You can't make him the X Factor too?
No, I didn't go there. I could have. Maybe I could pivot. No, I'm just kidding. We'll go MVP Nick Davidson for obvious reasons. Everything we've talked about, everything Cody just said. He's going to be their engine, be the guy that generates a lot of their offense because of the lack of guard creation. X Factor, I went Carter Welling, actually. I think it'll be interesting to see coming from Utah Valley how his defense translates. I think it will ultimately, but he's coming over defensive player of the year last year out there. 7% block rate, really good on the glass. He needs to provide that same impact, similar to like what we saw last year with Shefflin and Locken. There's a reason they brought him over to kind of recreate that with Davidson. and they need him to be that if they want to reach their ceiling.
And we'll move right into the ceiling and floor, actually, and we'll hear it from you, Cody, first. What can Clemson fans expect?
They can expect a high floor. I don't think there's any possibility that this team falls towards the bottom of the ACC. I think middle of the pack is the very worst that they finish. I mean, Brownell teams are always just rock solid across the board, particularly on the defensive end. Brownell's been inside the top 75 in defensive efficiency in 13 of 15 years at Clemson, and he's never finished outside the top 100, which I think is extremely impressive to be able to, have so many different players come through your program and still be able to generate high level defenses year in and year out. And that's just a credit to how he builds rosters, I think, and just to how he coaches defense and how he preaches transition denial and getting on the defensive glass just always creates a high floor. So middle of the pack is the lowest I see them, probably 9. I think their ceiling is realistically, I think they can be a top 3 team in this league. Last year, we didn't really see this team being where do we see this team 6th or 7th best in the league, and I guess that's probably within probably their most likely range of outcomes this year. But they exceeded expectations last year. They finished 17-3 in the league or something like that. I don't know. It was something. It was very impressive, and it was one of the better defenses in the country. So I can see them doing that again with a similar roster construction.
And let's hear your bold prediction as well.
I'll just stick with the Nick Davidson theme, and I'll say he makes first team All ACC.
You kidding me?
Is that fair?
That was my bold prediction. So.
Oh, I mean, and you think I'm the Nick Davidson stan? I think it's both of us.
I mean, it's what they've got, right? For me, ceiling. I said 4th in the ACC, floor 8th. I think they'll probably. I don't see a world really where they fall outside of that range. Obviously, things happen, but I think assuming the roster they have, assuming health, it's what they'll be. And you already heard my bold prediction. He also, I think Davidson makes first team all conference in the ACC. And I'll throw an extra one in there for bonus round here. 3.5 assists plus for Nick.
I mean, that's a given.
Maybe 4. No, come on.
We'll get.
All right, fine.
He averaged 2.8 last year. We're going that crazy.
He's just that good.
Tournament wise,
they're gonna finish 6th in the ACC, and they're gonna end up being a 9 seed.
Yeah, I mean, I have them rated 7th preseason, but I think there are some. Oh wait, no, I don't. I have them rated higher than that. I think I have them 5th. But ultimately, I can see them. I mean, I can see them being on the 6-7 line again, just because of the high floor that they have, and I don't see them going deep into a tournament. I think I see them maybe winning a game or two. Sweet 16 is probably the ceiling in a tournament setting.
And can we get maybe Clemson doesn't perform the way they did in the first round last year?
Well, I mean, I would hope not. I had a decent amount of money on Clemson there too, so it's upsetting.
That would be a good outcome, I think, for Clemson fans this year.
Yeah, it would be.
We'll see. Hopefully a better tournament outcome for the Tigers. But as always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.